Rain poured over Kintaba City that morning, the streets slick and shining like dark glass. At St. Elijah Cathedral, the air was thick with grief as Amara Ndlovu stood beside the gold coffin of her husband, Kojo Mensah. Black umbrellas huddled together, ash-gray clouds pressing low. In the middle of a condolence speech, her younger sister Zuri suddenly stepped forward, hands shaking but eyes burning. She grabbed the microphone. Her voice cracked, then grew steady as she announced that her son Tariq was Kojo's child. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Before anyone could react, Zuri held up a lipstick-red folder and revealed a sealed will, one that left Amara with nothing. Phones came out, whispers spreading like fire through Umbil Bay. The officiant froze mid-sentence. Madame Serwa Mensah, Kojo's powerful mother, rose from her seat and guided Zuri to the front pew as if she belonged there. Amara stayed still, her face a mask, refusing to let the cameras catch her break. In the background, court clerk Mr. Bako stepped forward and confirmed the will was registered. The words landed like a hammer blow. The rain kept falling, mixing with the murmurs, the clicks of recording phones, the quiet shock. Zuri's voice had set the city buzzing, and Amara knew her humiliation was already viral. She tightened her grip on her wedding band, her knuckles pale. Leaning close to the coffin, she whispered, "Not here." Then she turned and walked out into the wet streets, leaving the whispers behind, her grief hardening into something sharper, resolve. By the next morning, Kintaba was buzzing. Blogs splashed Amara's face with cruel captions calling her the barren wife. On talk radio, callers laughed and called Zuri the hidden first lady, praising her for claiming her place. Every headline, every comment felt like a blade twisting in Amara's chest. By noon, she was summoned to the Mensah compound in Tony Hills. The mansion, once her home, now felt hostile. Madame Serwa sat like a queen on her velvet chair, her voice cold and sharp. She spoke about lineage and blood, making it clear that Amara did not belong in this family anymore. With no trace of sympathy, she gave Amara a deadline: leave the house by the end of the week. Amara walked out, stunned but silent, her pride holding her upright. That afternoon, her best friend Amina Diallo, never one to mince words, showed up at her door. "You're not walking away from this," Amina said, pulling Amara by the hand. They drove straight to Attorney Lwazim Beale's office, a small room stacked with law books and smelling faintly of coffee. Lwazi listened carefully, then laid out the truth. The will handed Zuri full guardianship of Tariq's inheritance and moved Kojo's shares in Aria Logistics into something called the Umbil Trust. It was a new entity, separate from Amara, impossible to touch without a fight. As Lwazi spoke, memories surfaced like ghosts. Kojo's late nights. His phone always locked. Large deposits in their joint account, followed by sudden withdrawals. The time they fought in the kitchen, his voice softening only when he promised a reset after one last business trip. That trip had been just weeks before his death. The pieces began to feel heavier, sharper. Lwazi leaned forward. His voice was calm but urgent. This will could be forged, or Kojo may have been pressured. But we have only 72 hours to act before it's set in stone. You can file an injunction, stop everything, and force the court to investigate. Amara stared at the paper in front of her. Filing meant public war, more gossip, more shame. Not filing meant losing her home, her livelihood, and the dignity she had left. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the pen. Amina squeezed her shoulder, a silent anchor. For a moment, Amara thought about the headlines, the laughter, Madame Serwa's cold eyes. She thought about Kojo's promises, about the years she had stood by his side. She thought about how easily they had decided she was nothing. The pen touched the page. She signed. It wasn't just her name she was putting down, it was a line in the sand. She would not walk away quietly. She would not let them write her story for her. She would fight, and this time, she would fight to win. Amara decided she couldn't just wait for the court date, she needed answers. She began retracing Kojo's final month like a detective walking through the last days of a stranger she once knew. Her first stop was Harbor View Clinic, a quiet place overlooking the bay. Nurse Linda Eusefia met her in the hallway, glancing over her shoulder before speaking in a low voice. She said Kojo had come in secretly to request a private DNA kit, but the results were never collected. The envelope was still in the clinic storage, sealed and forgotten. That detail stayed in Amara's mind like a thorn. Back at Kojo's small music studio, the air smelled faintly of dust and old records. She searched through shelves, drawers, and the pockets of jackets hanging on the wall. Inside the lining of one faded blazer, her fingers found something hard and flat, a tiny SIM card wrapped in tape. In Kojo's desk, she also discovered a battered high-life tape recorder, the kind he used years ago when writing songs. She didn't know why, but she took both. That evening, Amina brought someone to meet her, a sharp-eyed reporter named Kayam Temb, known for digging up secrets in the city's underbelly. Kaya studied the scanned copy of the will and pointed to the registrar's stamp. She'd seen it before in a recent bribery investigation. The stamp was real, but the way it was issued was not. Together, they built a timeline. The will had been notarized at 11:43 p.m. the same night Kojo was supposed to be at a charity gala across town. CCTV footage showed Zuri, not Kojo, entering the registrar's annex just before midnight. Later, Kaya helped unlock the SIM card. Inside were text messages from someone saved as Queen S. The tone was commanding, almost threatening. Queen S told Kojo to secure the boy's future before the board vote at Aria Logistics. Amara's stomach twisted as she read them. Queen S could only mean Madame Surwa. Just when she thought she had enough to act, Kaya mentioned one more thing. She had an anonymous tip box where people left documents, photos, and evidence. That morning, she'd found something strange, a second will, unsigned, in Kojo's handwriting, leaving everything to Amara. Amara held the paper like it might burn her fingers. It wasn't proof yet, but it was a crack in the story Madame Surwa had built. The pieces were shifting, and for the first time, Amara felt she was no longer just surviving the scandal, she was closing in on the truth. The blue Cora lounge was dim, lit by strips of humming neon that painted the tables in blue and pink. The air smelled of sweet liquor and cigarette smoke, and soft jazz floated in the background. Amara spotted Zuri in a corner booth, her red dress clinging like a warning sign. She sat with her legs crossed, swirling a drink she barely touched. When Amara slid into the seat across from her, Zuri's eyes flickered, half defiant, half guilty. At first, they sat in silence, the music filling the space between them. Then Zuri spoke, her voice low and uneven. She said Kojo had loved Amara, truly, but when he found out Tariq might be his son, he had panicked. Madame Surwa stepped in with promises to handle everything, if he followed her plan. She said it was about the family's image, Zuri said, staring at her glass. About keeping things clean. Zuri admitted she only wanted recognition, not this war, but once the documents were in motion, she found herself enjoying the attention, the whispers, the way people suddenly looked at her. Amara's face stayed calm, but her voice was steel when she said, "I want a fresh DNA test." Court ordered. And a full audit of the registrar's office. Zuri's eyes darted away. She confessed she had signed papers she hadn't fully read. It was all moving too fast, she murmured. When Amara mentioned the late-night notarization and the bribery probe tied to the registrar's stamp, Zuri's mask cracked. Her voice wavered as she warned Amara about crossing Madame Surwa. "You don't understand," she said. "It's not just social ruin. People get hurt when they go against her." Amara leaned forward, her eyes sharp under the neon glow. "I'm already ruined in their eyes," she said quietly. "What else can they take from me?" Zuri's hand trembled as she reached for her drink. For a moment, her gaze softened, like the younger sister who once shared secrets in their bedroom late at night. But that softness vanished as quickly as it came. You don't know what she's capable of, she repeated. Amara didn't blink. Then you have a choice. Help me fix this, or go down with it. Her words hung in the air, heavy as the bass line thrumming through the lounge. Zuri didn't answer. She just sat there, her painted lips pressed tight, the ice in her glass melting into the untouched drink. Amara slid out of the booth without another word, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Outside, the night air was warm and sticky, the city lights blurring in the distance. Amara walked away from the lounge knowing Zuri was cracked, not broken, yet. Whether her sister would choose loyalty or survival was still unclear. But one thing was certain, the battle lines were drawn, and this was no longer just about inheritance. It was about truth, power, and which sister would be left standing when it was over. The fight moved fast. Uwazi wasted no time. By the next morning, the emergency injunction was filed, freezing everything connected to the contested will. Kaya threw herself into tracking the bribery trail, knocking on doors and meeting sources in shadowy cafes. Amina hit the noisy aisles of Arya Market, moving from stall to stall, asking if anyone had seen Zuri or Madame Surwa's people near the registrar's office that night. Then came Yaumensa, Kojo's estranged cousin. He had stayed far from family drama for years, but as a forensic accountant, he knew how to follow money. He dug into the Umbil Trust and found it was nothing more than a shell, a fake front pushing Arya Logistics profits into offshore accounts linked to a fixer named Chuma Radebe, a man known for making rich people's problems disappear. At Harbor View Clinic, Nurse Lindai finally handed Amara the sealed envelope Kojo never collected. Her fingers shook as she opened it, only to find the report stamped with a single, frustrating word, inconclusive. The sample had been contaminated. No answers there, just more questions. Meanwhile, Kaya's digging had rattled Mr. Bako, the court clerk who had confirmed the will. Fearing exposure, he agreed to speak. He told them Madame Surwa's driver had delivered a pre-stamped ledger to the registrar's office after hours. No Kojo, no questions asked. It was exactly the kind of shortcut that made a forgery possible. Back in her apartment, Amara decided to listen to the old tape recorder she had found in Kojo's studio. She pressed play, and his voice filled the room, raw, tired, almost trembling. He admitted he was afraid. "I'll repair everything after the board vote," he said. "Amara deserves the life I promised." He didn't say Tariq wasn't his son. He didn't deny the boy. He only begged forgiveness for what he called his cowardice. Amara sat still, the weight of his words settling on her. For all the lies and betrayals, Kojo had been trapped too. But his fear had left her to clean the wreckage. She knew then that this fight wasn't just about her name or her share of the company. It was about tearing down the fraud without crushing a child who had no say in any of it. She made her choice. She would go after Madame Surwa, expose the bribery, and reclaim what was hers. But she would also protect Tariq, no matter what the DNA said in the end. The boy was innocent. The guilty were the ones who thought power and greed could bury the truth. The case was no longer just a defense, it was an attack. And for the first time since Kojo's funeral, Amara felt something burn hotter than humiliation. It was resolve, sharp and steady, ready to cut through every lie they had built. The High Court of Kintaba was swarming before the doors even opened. Reporters jostled for position, cameras flashing as Madame Surwa swept in with her top lawyers, dressed like royalty in deep blue silk. Her chin was high, her steps unhurried, as if the outcome was already hers. Amara entered quietly, flanked by Uwazi, Kaya, Yao, and Amina, her face calm but her heart pounding. When the session began, the judge first addressed the emergency injunction, confirming it would remain in place. Then came the order for a court-controlled DNA test, collected and handled under strict chain of custody. The courtroom was so still you could hear the scratch of the clerk's pen. Hours later, the sealed results were delivered to the bench. The judge read them aloud. Tariq was Kojo's biological son. The gallery erupted, gasps, murmurs, flashes of phones. Amara closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them steady. The result changed nothing about the fraud. This was still about justice. Kaya and Yao took the stand, laying out the evidence. They showed the registrar's bribe logs, the suspicious after-hours stamp, and the web of offshore accounts tied to the Umbil Trust. Mr. Bako followed, voice shaking but firm, testifying that Madame Surwa's driver delivered a pre-stamped ledger when the office was closed. Nurse Lindai explained how the first DNA sample was compromised, making the clinic's report worthless. Finally, the unsigned will, leaving everything to Amara, was presented. A handwriting expert confirmed it was Kojo's. The air in the courtroom shifted, even Madame Surwa's lawyers shifted in their seats. Under the weight of evidence, Zuri began to crack. Her hands twisted in her lap, her voice breaking as she admitted Madame Surwa had planned everything. The will's timing was deliberate, meant to cut Amara out before the Aria Logistics Board vote. She said she had been swept up in it, but the damage was done. The judge's ruling came swift and sharp. The contested will was nullified. The registrar's office would face a full investigation, and the bribe case was referred for prosecution. Amara was restored as the primary heir, pending final probate. But the court also ordered a supervised trust for Tariq's upbringing, ensuring the boy's inheritance was safe from any more family schemes. As the gavel fell, the room buzzed with the sense of a chapter closing and another opening. Amara didn't smile or raise her chin in victory. She only breathed, deeply, letting the weight settle. Justice had come, but it was complicated, truth had hurt everyone in the room, even her. She rose, meeting Madame Surwa's glare with quiet strength, then walked out into the crowd of flashing cameras. The fight was over, but the rebuilding had just begun. And this time, it would be on her terms. In the weeks that followed the court's decision, Amara made it clear she would not punish Tariq for the sins of the adults around him. She announced the creation of the Kojo Mensa Scholarship Fund, a program to help bright children in Kintaba get the education Kojo once dreamed of funding. For Tariq, she established a transparent trust for his upbringing, managed by a neutral professional, no control from Zuri, no influence from Madame Surwa. Madame Surwa's fall was swift. The charges against her made headlines, and the once feared matriarch became a figure of whispered pity. Zuri, stripped of her sudden fame, came quietly to Amara, offering to testify against the registrar network. Her tone was different now, not defiant, but weary, and maybe ready to make amends. Amara moved back into the Mtoni Hills house, not as the barren wife they once mocked, but as a woman stepping into her late husband's business with clear eyes. Yao guided her through the complex web of Aria Logistics, while Amina stood at her side, reminding her to lead with both strategy and courage. One golden afternoon, Amara stood on the sunlit balconies of Aria Market, the city alive beneath her. She removed her wedding band, feeling its familiar weight one last time, and placed it beside Kojo's old tape recorder. She pressed record, her voice steady as she spoke, "For Tariq, for truth, for the woman I'm becoming." Then she stepped away, walking into the boardroom light. Her grief was still there, but it had transformed, no longer a weight pulling her down, but a force pushing her forward, grounded and unshakable.